Bringing intimacy back. What does intimacy mean to you? In a world that feels more connected than ever, many people feel more disconnected than ever. It's time to reconnect. It's time to communicate. It's time to bring intimacy back. Bringing Intimacy Back, hosted by Dr. April Brown, the Doctor of Intimacy, co-hosted by Brittany Garcia and Thomas Lester. Intimacy is more than sex. It's connection. It's communication. It's relationship. Bringing intimacy back, where intimacy is real, creating deeper connections, one conversation at a time.
Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. Good afternoon, Brittany and Tommy. How are you guys doing?
Good afternoon. Doing well.
The dream. Doing well.
Yes. I am so excited about today's topic. It's the intimacy in the age of hookup culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Fun topic.
Fun topic. Yes. And so, just even as I'm thinking of that title we have, and this thing about hookup culture.
Yeah.
When we say the word hookup, what exactly does that even definition mean in the sense of culture?
I think we got to look at it. How are we defining it? We defining like that hookup culture within some of our parameters like situationships, casual sex, just neither, no labels. I mean, how are we defining it? And I think that is the unique part of today's dating culture is that it can go anywhere. It's based on who's defining it. So.
Right.
Absolutely. And if we want to take a look at situationships first, that aspect of our hookup culture, culturally, a situationship is basically more than friends, but less than a relationship. So there is emotional and or sexual intimacy. It can definitely be there, but without clearly defined commitment, expectations, or any sort of labels. The defining feature isn't necessarily the amount of intimacy that somebody might be experiencing. It's more so the ambiguity surrounding the relationship. Now, clinically, situationship isn't technically a formal diagnosis or have any clinical category for it. But as therapists, we might instead try to conceptualize it through things like attachment or relational ambiguity, boundaries, expectations, and emotional availability. So the question, I think, becomes a little bit less, what are we calling this? And more so along the lines of what are the rules of a relationship? And does each person actually understand them in the same way? And that's where situationships, in a sense, can become emotionally complicated because two people can be participating in the exact same relationship, but having completely different internal experiences in it. One person may experience it as casual and somebody else may experience it as we're basically dating. So I know, Tommy, before we started the podcast today, we were chatting a little bit. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that cultural, clinical side of situationships and your perspectives.
Well, I'm going to come from a little bit of a simple perspective here because when I do think of like the modern culture out here dating, I don't think the biggest problem that we're seeing is that people don't want connection. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'd actually argue and say that I do think people desperately do want connection. It's just how are they going about it? So what is the problem then? And I think the problem is, are we dating to build intimacy? Or are people just getting together, giving access to themselves, to one another, and they're doing it without what we've talked about with intimacy, safety, clarity, commitment. All of those are required to have intimacy. And so in situationships, as you're talking about, I can't say myself that situationships are automatically unhealthy. Because early dating, if you really think about it, in early dating, well, there is some natural uncertainty about it. You know, as you're getting to know each other and you're going through the ebb and flow of things. The problem, however, is when ambiguity, as you mentioned, does become the aspect of the relationships. And what I mean by that for me is I'm giving you, right, myself, I'm giving you relationship level emotion. I may even be giving you relationship level physical access, but neither of us are willing to like define what we're actually building or where we're actually going. And so we were challenged to look at like, is there any like cultural pieces out there that we could tie this in? And so I found a movie, 500 Days of Summer, which is a pretty good cultural picture of this whole situationship. in this movie, you have two characters, Tom and Summer. They share the same relationship, but they experience it through very different, pretty much different expectations come about it. So in that, the different expectations, I think that's what gets people hurt. It's not always the absence of a label that I think is doing the problem or doing the hurt. I think it's the absence of shared clarity. And so that takes me is on longevity. I'm curious on what your thoughts are as far as like longevity with situationships.
So the thing that I was just thinking about is as we're starting this conversation, when we say the age of a hookup culture, many people think, oh, those are Gen X, or those are the, not Gen X, I'm Gen X. Those are the younger generations. Yeah. But
Mm.
in reality, if you're out there listening, I think this happens at 20. This happened at when you're 70.
Mm.
Yes, yes, this is something
Yeah.
that's happening in a lot of different aspects. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so I just want the audience to realize that it's not just about the young people and their hookup culture, but there are many people my age, older, younger,
Our
who are,
grandparents could be out there.
yeah, exactly,
Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, if it's like telling a story, it's like you're going and you're meeting someone, whether it's at the bar, the church, whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. Yeah, and they look sexy. They look beautiful. They start talking to you, start talking, yeah. And then our body starts to feel XYZ, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And then we're like, oh, maybe we need to hook up. We need to get attached somehow. And we go through that we go toward that attachment in a very quick manner without, like Tommy, you were saying, setting guidelines, setting safety, setting protocols.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're out there listening, you're like, oh my gosh, that is something that's happening. We are going to go deep dive into this for sure. But before we go deep dive into it, we are it's August and kids and everybody are going back to school, and I just want to always highlight a nonprofit, which is Adopt a Classroom.org. How can I put it? They are an organization that helps teachers, parents, and students with the resources they need. And I mean, people need resources. So think about
Yeah.
Adopt a Classroom. Yeah. Going back to you, Tommy, I think it was what you were saying about setting the boundaries of when we hook up.
Yeah. The clarity. You need
The
it.
clarity. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Absolutely.
because if you don't have it, it just becomes, how can I put it? Uh, very open, and sometimes feelings and people get hurt because no one has said XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it's like, do I really need to say XYZ? Because I just met you. I don't want to scare you off. Yeah.
But it goes back to understanding, in that entity, it takes time. As we said, there always is going to be a little bit of that uncertainty in the beginning of a relationship. And that's not the moment. Like, I don't know anybody that just meets someone on the first date and goes, okay, here's everything in my closet back here. Like
Right.
it takes time. We got to build that safety so that way we can sit and be known, and without the fear of, oh my gosh, I'm asking for clarity and now that person's going to leave me because I'm asking for something, or I'm requiring something, or they need something, and oh my gosh, can I even do that? So I'm just gonna bounce. I'm gonna get out of here. We need time. You need to allow that to take place, and what you were just mentioning, that connection. Oh, I meet somebody, we're feeling great. Things start to flare. I'm feeling the tingles, right? All that stuff that happens quick. Those are quick connections, but it's not building. We have to recognize for what it is. That sex can happen quick, emotions can happen quick, the connection can happen quick, but intimacy has to be built. You need to allow it to have time. And so I think that's the important part here when we're talking about, situationships, and the definition of that isn't going to have clarity necessarily in there. And that's why I was curious about, if we're talking about relationships, situationship, relationship, the ship being two things being brought together here, how does that affect people's longevities? Is it hurting relationships? Or things failing out, frying out before they even get started? And that's why I was like kind of curious myself as I saw this topic come about.
I think it's very important to, when you're dating, is to state your intention. What are you dating for? And then our thing that she was showing earlier, some people are dating for intimacy, which is what, this podcast is a lot about. So of course it requires that communication and stuff. Some people, which is the majority, one of the majorities, others are staying for commitment. So like what you said, Tommy, you got to communicate. We got to talk about what that looks like. And then if you're just hooking up for attraction and sex, letting your partner know. That's all I'm here for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if someone becomes accustomed to intimacy without accountability, they may learn that they can receive that connection while avoiding the vulnerability of commitment. And that can also even come in and reinforce the avoidance of having those types of difficult conversations, because it can be uncomfortable to have those conversations, asking, what are we? What do you want from this? Are we exclusive? Where's this going? Things like that can be hard to chat about if it's not something that we're used to, being vulnerable. Those conversations, though, are actually a part of what's needed to have healthy intimacy and a healthy connection with someone, because healthy relationships, they do require tolerating that discomfort. There is a certain discomfort that comes with being known, with expressing our needs, negotiating differences, and potentially hearing something that we might not want to hear. So I don't think that the issue is necessarily that situationships are inherently unhealthy. Some people genuinely want something casual, and they really do communicate that clearly. The problem is when that ambiguity, like we've already mentioned, replaces the communication, because sometimes people aren't afraid of relationships. They're afraid of the vulnerability and the accountability that relationships require. So, Tommy, I know that when it comes to the church, you have some really wonderful perspectives, and I'd really be interested in hearing what they might be.
Yeah. If there's anybody listening and they're in the realm, like what you want to call it, Christianity, being in the church, having faith, whatever. First, I like that you brought in, and it's been talked about, intimacy. How does intimacy come into play here? Well, let me remind you, it requires enough safety for me to be able to tell you what I actually want, instead of pretending that I'm okay with something or even something less than, because I'm afraid if I ask for that clarity, that structure, that as Dr. April, you just said, like, we need to define what it is that we're dating for. If I go about that, well, it might make you want to leave. So again, biblical perspective, the first thing I can think of is I'll go to Proverbs. Proverbs 4:23, it tells us to keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the spring of life. Now, I don't look at that verse and interpret it as never take risks or don't ever risk your heart, because once again, if you're going to broach vulnerability, you're going to get into a relationship, you don't know the other person, there is some risk involved. You are essentially giving your heart to somebody and saying, hey, I'm going to be vulnerable here. I'm going to give you my heart. I know you could squish it. I know you can hurt it, but I'm going to hope that you actually take care of it. But what I hear here, especially with longevity and trying to have a relationship that is healthy and withstanding, is stewardship. How are you stewarding relationships? How are you stewarding your heart? And so what I hear in this verse is pay attention to what you're teaching your heart to call love. And that's an important piece.
Mm-hmm. And in that paying attention, one of the things, Brittany, you had said earlier, I don't know if you can have intimacy without accountability.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because going back to what you're saying, Tommy, about paying attention, when you're truly intimate, you're truly present.
Yes.
We have to be accountable for this right here. Yeah, from a spiritual, from a non-spiritual, you got to be accountable for your own feelings and stuff. So I don't think you can have intimacy without accountability.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we've already discussed, starting at this whole entire season up, it starts with you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you accountable to yourself?
Right.
So, yeah, I agree with that statement a lot.
Right. And so if you don't want any accountability
Mm.
and you just want I forgot that you put it like free sex, not free sex, I guess. Hookups. Just nothing in all honesty, nothing in this world is free, to be honest with you guys. We pay for things in a variety of different ways, which is another
Right.
topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're just in there for the sex, you just gotta just have this relief. Just be honest about it and say, hey, this is all I'm in for.
Hmm.
And when people say that to you, believe it. Sometimes we go and we try to change people.
Yeah. Yeah. In this idea, we're talking about, the commitment that's a part of things. What about those that fear commitment? What about the people that fear commitment? Is there an okay part in that fear? Is there a healthy aspect of that? Does that lead to why we also have the other side too? We're talking about communication here at the same
Right.
time. So is that where ghosting comes into effect? So do fear, commitment, and ghosting go hand in hand in some way? Like, what do you guys think? How does that play a part?
Yeah, I think that not wanting commitment doesn't automatically mean somebody has commitment phobia. Sometimes someone isn't committing because they just genuinely don't want to be in that relationship. Like Dr. April, you were saying, it's like when somebody shows you who they are, it tells you what they want, believe them, right? So fear of commitment becomes more interesting, I feel, when someone wants that intimacy but repeatedly pulls away once that intimacy starts to feel too real. So with ghosting specifically, there could be multiple motivations. I mean, avoiding an uncomfortable conversation, wanting the easiest way out, feeling overwhelmed by communication. And sometimes, honestly, there might even be a legitimate safety concern that would pull someone to ghost in those moments. So we shouldn't automatically pathologize or try to label somebody or every person who might ghost. But when ghosting does become someone's default conflict or breakup strategy, it can tell us something about how they tolerate discomfort and the relationship as a whole's responsibility. So there are a couple things that can happen psychologically speaking when somebody might be ghosted. They're the ghosty, if you will. Ghosting creates something particularly painful that I think we've mentioned already more than once in this segment, which is that ambiguity. Because you're not just experiencing rejection, you don't know why. And that can lead to a whole plethora of things. It can lead to self blame, constantly replaying interactions, questioning your attractiveness or your worth, and maybe even obsessively trying to figure out what happened. So, ghosting can produce more persistent negative effects than just straightforward rejection, with that uncertainty and lack of closure being really important factors. And I think this really does tie in beautifully back into intimacy because intimacy, like we've been saying, requires that vulnerability. But ghosting teaches us that vulnerability can feel dangerous. So if somebody repeatedly experiences unexplained rejection, they may eventually decide, I'm never putting myself in that position again. And again, I know Tommy, I'm curious, we were chatting about this stuff and a lot of the biblical truth that does have, or does have a way to connect. So I'm curious, can you share a little bit of that?
Well, let me be clear when I say this and speak on this because this is something that just happened in the church. We're there's no exception to that, and so, but I'll be clear. I don't think, and as you said, I don't think that everyone who avoids commitment has some deep psychological wound about it. Sometimes people simply just are not interested in a relationship, but there are others, and you mentioned that there are others that commitment activates something deeper, and we have to understand what is that deeper, that fear, that the rejection, the failure, there's a loss of independence that can sometimes set in. There's also a belief sometimes for somebody that, well, if I stay in this long enough, they're going to start to get to know me, and if they get to know me, well, man, maybe eventually they're going to leave me. And so for ghosting, I see a pretty direct connection here because with ghosting, it can become an easy escape from that discomfort. Because instead of saying, you know what, hey, we need to have a conversation. I don't think this is working, or I like you, but I'm not interested anymore. Instead of doing any of that, I just disappear. I say nothing. And so, yeah, you mentioned the intimacy. And so I connect ghosting to intimacy like this. Emotional maturity isn't just demonstrated by how we enter our relationships. In fact, I think they're demonstrated by how we leave them. And that is something that I think for those in the church we need to hear, and I definitely think someone needs to hear this, is that if I've accepted your vulnerability, or if someone has accepted your vulnerability, your attention, your affection, maybe even your body, but when they're done, they don't believe that they owe you the basic form of honesty, then we're not talking about just dating etiquette here. We're talking about how that person valued you as a person and valued your dignity and worth. So yeah, you want to talk about being in the church, something that is biblically relevant. And if someone here is listening to this and like, well, am I a ghoster? Would I probably do that? Well, hear this. In the book of James, it tells us to be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. What are we being told here? Sometimes healthy relationships require us to tolerate an uncomfortable conversation rather than trying to escape it. And I think that would be how I would set it up. So if someone's in the church trying to figure this out, maybe they've been hurt, or maybe they're trying to figure out how to stay, go back to the book of James. Read that. Be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Are you willing to have those tough conversations, or are you just wanting to escape?
And on the flip side, if you've had the experience where someone has ghosted you and you're wondering to know why, and you go back in your head and you think everything about everything that happened and you flipped it over, and maybe you've gone into therapy and trying to figure out yourself and stuff, at some point you do have to let it go. And not be stuck, and not say to people, you don't have to get a PhD in this person.
It's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because people want to say, and they just get stuck. I just don't know. It's been, 8 months, and I can't figure out why. Did I do something wrong? At some point, we have to let it go.
I think we give too much power to the other person, thinking that they're responsible for the closure.
Right.
The reality is, if someone leaves me or I leave, it doesn't matter. Like, I am responsible for how I close out that relationship.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be tough for someone when they are stuck, when they have given themselves to somebody, or they were requiring something in return that they're not getting.
Right.
Especially the why.
Right. Right. And from a spiritual point of view, or even in my own life, I realize that I feel like sometimes my higher power has taken people out of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doors can close.
Doors is closed. Yeah. And that person may not even know why they left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it's helped me grow as a person myself. I've learned
Absolutely.
from it.
Yeah. I was going to say that growth is an important thing.
Yeah.
I think I think guys might deal with this a little bit more than I would say women, as far as like, I would say that based on the clients that I've had in front of me, but sometimes those doors close and, well, guys turn into the Kool-Aid man and they just make their own door next to the door that closed because they're chasing after something that really, it doesn't exist. And they're too afraid, or they're not able to create that closure. And so, yeah, it's the growth comes in recognizing why the door closed for yourself, and building that again. Into me, I see. Into me, what am I seeing? So I can have that safety, the security, the trust in me. I can move forward and be okay. The end of that relationship doesn't define me.
Right. And Tommy, you made a good point, because I'm going to put out there on social media, I feel like women get more attached than men. In reality, I think, kind of using that door thing, women get stuck at the door. The door is closed, and they're like stuck there like a little puppy. Why won't this door open again? Why won't this door open again? You know what I'm saying? And even if there's using a God reference, a window that's open, there's another door. Yeah.
So
sometimes that's for growth of us, because it goes back, like you said, into me we see. How do we grow from that? How do we look back at that and say, wow, that relationship was such and such? Those are the things that I've learned from it. Those things I need to, put on my list to watch out for. Yeah. And everybody comes into our lives, teaches us something.
True.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the stuck part too is also, how do we define failure? If you're talking about that, because sometimes I think failure to some people is a complete end, a complete loss. But there can be success
Right.
in failure, depending on how I want to define it. You know, if a relationship fails, if it falls apart, even sadly to say, even if it was a traumatic, you know, toxic or however, the question is what are you willing to look at?
Right.
And go back to what you said. What are you willing to grow? How are you willing to grow? You know, the universal truth that I always sit on is change is inevitable, but growth is optional. Change just took place. Maybe you didn't even have anything to do with it.
Right.
But growth requires you to look inside, build that awareness, and then choose to make a choice. You have to grow.
Absolutely. I think another really important component of that growth is also grace. Because once we've either been ghosted or we've left those types of relationships that kind of left us lingering or just in the stuck, I don't know phase, giving ourselves that grace to kind of sit with those emotions, see how we're feeling, maybe not analyze them alone, go see a therapist and have those conversations with someone who can provide you that support, keeping grace at the center of it, to be gentle with ourselves through those moments, because it can be an experience that could be traumatic for somebody to have that type of situation go on. So again, keeping that grace at the center of it, I think makes the process, the grieving process and the processing process a little bit easier to go through, because we are being mindful of our own internal world and our own internal temperature. Again, connecting that back into the into me I see aspect of intimacy.
So, as people are listening and they hear the word grace, can you define that? Because there are some people that we throw that word around.
Yeah, absolutely. So by grace, I'm essentially meaning being gentle with ourselves, kind of being that quiet observer in the back of the room. So when we have an emotion or a feeling arise, taking into account what our bodies feel like. I know, for example, something that's very common with anxiety is people feel that in their chest. So if I'm feeling that pressure in my chest or my heart starts to beat pretty fast, my hands start to get a little clammy, that's the cues that I'm getting a little bit anxious and my nervous system is activating. So, not judging that emotion or those sensations, those feelings, that's what I mean by grace. It's being gentle with ourselves enough to be curious about our emotional experiences instead of judging them harshly or getting upset with ourselves, frustrated with ourselves. Oh my gosh, this breakup was a year and a half ago. Why am I still feeling this way? It's being curious as to why. What are those underlying reasons for that? And again, being soft with ourselves, kind and compassionate gets us way further than being harsh, judgmental, or critical, because the world can sometimes apply that pressure enough. We don't need to be another addition to apply that pressure.
Yeah, thank you. I
Absolutely.
love that definition. Yes. So we're gonna go and take a break, but when we come back, we have one final question about casual sex versus connection, and some resources on helping us in this intimacy in the age of the hookup culture. Okay, and we'll be back in a moment.
Are you seeking to deepen your intimate relationships and build stronger, more meaningful bonds? Introducing Improving Intimacy, Open Hearts. Strong Bonds by Dr. April Brown. This groundbreaking guide offers practical insights and strategies to transform your connections. Discover how to enhance communication, build unwavering trust, and reignite passion. Dr. Brown's expert advice empowers you to create a truly fulfilling and lasting connection. Don't wait. Get your copy today and start your journey to a more connected and joyful life.
Welcome back to the Bringing Intimacy Show, where intimacy is real. Yeah, and so we were just talking, we've been talking about the hookup culture, we've been talking about commitment, anxiety, fear, the sense of accountability, you know? And so we have listeners out there who have um, maybe looked at casual sex, maybe wanting connection, um, and they're needing tips. You know, how do I decipher? Is it possible to feel connected through casual sex? You know, what's best for me? How do we not judge ourselves?
And casual sex, I want to make a note, doesn't automatically mean no intimacy. because people in casual sexual relationships, they can experience that intimacy, the affection, the cuddling, spending the night, the emotional connections. So we have to separate sexual intimacy from relationship intimacy, because you can be physically vulnerable, sexually intimate, affectionate, emotionally open in the moment without necessarily being willing to build a shared life with someone. And in fact, for some people, that casual sex can feel safer than commitment because there's fewer expectations. So we can experience closeness without having to answer, where is this going, or can I rely on you? But commitment introduces something casual sex doesn't really require, which is consistency. So it's one thing to be vulnerable for a night, but it's another thing completely to let someone consistently know who you are over time. Now, could someone be comfortable with casual sex because they fear commitment? Absolutely, that's certainly possible. But again, it's not the only explanation. Someone might genuinely enjoy that casual sex and have no desire for a committed relationship. But another person might use casual sex as a way to regulate that closeness, right? So I want you close, but not too close. I want the affection, but I don't want the expectations. I want that intimacy, but I don't want to depend on you. And I know casual sex can be a pretty convoluted topic and a little bit layered. So I'd love to hear you guys' perspective on it.
But you just asked about connection, casual sex and connection. And so if I can be honest myself, yes, I do think people can generally feel connected through casual sex. Their experience or experiences, well, it isn't fake simply because the relationship isn't committed or committed by our definitions. But I want people to hear me on this, though. Feeling connected and building a secure connection, they're not necessarily the same thing. And so for some people, physical vulnerability can feel very easy, easier than emotional vulnerability. And again, I get the logic in the world, try it before you buy it. Well, it's my body, whatever you want to call it. But physical intimacy, well, it may have a beginning and it also has an end. But on the other hand, emotional intimacy will require me to have to stay around long enough for you to see my fears, my weaknesses, my disappointments, my attachment patterns, and, well, my imperfections, in hopes that you're still going to stay. And so for anybody trying to understand this, as you were saying, well, how can we bring this out for understanding? Well, sometimes taking our clothes off is easier than taking off the armor. And that is the conversation that I think hookup culture sometimes tends to miss. Because sex can answer the question, do you desire me? Am I sexy? Am I attracted to you? It's surface level. But emotional intimacy has to get deeper, and it has to eventually ask the question and also answer it, do you know me? And those are not the same questions.
And I'm going to follow that up, and I don't think not everybody can do casual sex. And not everybody can have emotional intimacy. You've got to know you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just because your friends are doing it or the partner wants it, but you know for yourself that I really desire deep things, or I get over attached to if someone leaves because of XYZ, I just can't, I'm going to lose myself. Then choose not to participate in that. Because later on, you end up doing damage to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And if you're a person who's busy, I really don't want to be dating anyone. I don't really want to know about their lives, their dogs, and all of this stuff. I just want to go to work, come home, get some action, and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then don't try to end up in a relationship. Don't try to fake it out and be, interested in the person. Just be honest.
Yeah.
That's going to be my main tip for the day, is just get to know you. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So this was a great topic. Yes. Yeah. So Tommy,
Complex topic.
A complex topic for sure. Tommy, what's coming up next?
Sure. So again, remind everybody, we go live every other week for this, but even on the in-between weeks, we are still posting a little bit of our topic discussions and how we're bringing the podcast forward for you. So on September 10th, we're going to be going into O. O stands for overthinking and anxiety and how it plays in with relationship self-sabotage, as well as the following week going into N, or the following week as far as September 24th. I mean, N stands for no more toxic love, which is going to be a definite interesting topic, to say the least.
Yeah, thank you. And we've had some great topics on this emotional intimacy. That's what we've been really working on, is the emotional piece. And if you've missed any parts, Brittany, can you let them know what other topics we've covered so far?
Absolutely. We've covered other topics, such as I flip through my script here, we've covered parental wounds in modern relationships, oversharing, online attention and emotional cheating, trauma bonds versus true love. So there really are a whole bunch of really wonderful conversations on our social media platforms, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, that you can go back, check out, and get up to date with our segments.
Yeah, definitely. And you can also just go onto the website, bringingintimacyback.com, and we have all the podcast, upcoming shows, and previous shows on the website. Thank you guys so much. If you like it, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and we will see you all soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Bringing Intimacy Back, where intimacy is real. To continue the conversation, visit us at bringingintimacyback.com and connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, YouTube, and your favorite podcast platforms. Looking to deepen your relationships even further? Check out Dr. April Brown's Improving Intimacy book series, now available on Amazon and Kindle, including the newest edition, Open Hearts, Strong Bonds. Be sure to join us again next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another meaningful conversation about relationships, connection, communication, and intimacy. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, share, and leave a review to help us bring intimacy back to even more people. Until next time, keep building deeper connections, one conversation at a time.